Let's dive right in with a massive question. What if our most basic idea of how life works, the one we all learned in school, is just wrong? What if the whole idea of a genetic blueprint has actually been holding us back from understanding what's really going on?
It all kicked off with this incredible promise. You got to remember, back in the year 2000, when the first draft of the human genome was announced, the feeling was just electric. President Clinton's words here, they perfectly captured that moment. We really believed we'd found it, the language of life itself.
And this image, wow, it just says it all, right? This isn't a prop from some sci-fi movie. These are the actual, real books containing the printed-out sequence of the human genome. The metaphor was so powerful and so clear, we finally had the instruction manual, the complete blueprint. The book of life was finally open for us to read.
But then, well, reality set in. The COVID-19 pandemic was a brutal, humbling lesson for all of us. I mean, we sequenced the virus's genome almost instantly, but we had no idea who would get critically ill and who would have no symptoms at all. So, if we have the book of life, why are the stories it tells still so maddeningly unpredictable?
Okay, so this brings us to a really brilliant thought experiment that gets right to the heart of this problem. What if our entire method for studying life is based on a completely flawed analogy?
So a biologist named Yuri Lazebnik came up with this great question. What would happen if biologists, using all their standard lab techniques, tried to figure out how a simple transistor radio works? They wouldn't start with a circuit diagram because they don't have one. They'd have to approach it like it was some new biological specimen they just discovered. And here's pretty much how it would go down. First, they'd get a working radio and a broken one, and compare them. They'd take them apart, make these meticulous lists of all the little pieces, classifying them by shape, by color, you name it. Then, the fun part, they'd start pulling out components one by one. Sooner or later, they'd yank out one specific wire, the radio would go silent, and eureka! They'd triumphantly declare it the most important component.
But here's the real test, right? The million-dollar question. After creating this huge, exhaustive parts list and mapping some of the connections, could they actually use any of that information to fix the broken radio?
And the answer is a big fat no. Mostly they can't. They've got a perfect inventory of all the parts, but they have zero understanding of the principles of radio transmission. They don't know how the thing actually works as a system.
Lazebnik's analogy is just this perfect critique of how we've been doing biology for so long. But what if the problem is even deeper than that? What if it's not just the method that's wrong, but the entire assumption that life is like a machine to begin with?
And this leads us to a pretty radical idea. Life might be operating on a completely different kind of logic, a kind of logic that's totally alien to any machine we've ever built.
Now, to be fair, you can totally see why the machine analogy is so tempting. I mean, just look at this thing. This is a bacterial flagellar motor. It's a real molecular structure in a cell that looks and acts just like a tiny rotary engine. It is absolutely mind-blowing. But the thing is, structures like this, they're the spectacular exception, not the rule.
When you actually put them side by side, the differences are just stark. Machines are designed by an engineer. Life evolves through selection. Machines are fragile. You break one critical part and it's game over. Living systems, on the other hand, are incredibly robust. They can adapt to damage. And get this, while our technology needs predictable, orderly conditions to work, life actually thrives on noise, on randomness, on diversity. It uses that chaos.
So the takeaway here is really profound. Life isn't a clunky machine, and it's not a neat and tidy computer program. It's something else entirely. It's its own category of thing. With its own logic, we have to stop trying to cram it into these metaphors that just don't fit.
Okay, so if the old rules don't apply, what are the new ones? Well, the latest research is starting to paint this much more dynamic, much more fascinating picture of how life actually gets things done.
This quote from Philip Ball just nails the fundamental shift in thinking. For decades, we saw genes as these little dictators barking out orders from on high, but the new biology sees them as something else entirely. They're a toolkit, a box of resources, but at the end of the day, they are servants to the bigger needs of the cell and the whole organism.
So let's quickly run through these new principles. Robustness is life's incredible ability to take a punch and just keep going. Modularity is basically evolution being clever and lazy. It reuses parts that already work, like Legos, to build new things. Self-organization is how you get amazing complexity without a detailed blueprint. Think of how a flock of birds moves as one.
And combinatorial logic, that's how a small number of genes can create this almost infinite variety of life, kind of like how just 3 colors can make millions of different shades on a screen.
Now, this new understanding, it does more than just explain mechanics. It actually forces us to ask a much, much deeper question about the very nature of being alive.
You know, we're often told that science deals with how, not why. The famous physicist Steven Weinberg once said that the more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless.
But this is where the new biology throws a massive curveball. It suggests that, yeah, maybe the universe as a whole doesn't have a point, but for a living organism, having a point, a purpose, a goal is the only thing that matters. Surviving, finding food, staying warm, reproducing, these are all purposes.
And this leads to a truly mind-bending idea, that a living thing is fundamentally a meaning generator. Think about it. A living thing is constantly scanning its world and assigning value to stuff. Nutrients have value, safety has value. In doing that, it literally creates a little pocket of meaning, its own point, in an otherwise pointless universe.
And this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It has huge real-world implications. It's already changing how we think about medicine. Instead of just trying to fix broken parts like in that radio, we're starting to learn how to work with the incredible resilience and adaptability of the body's systems, especially our own immune system.
And so we'll end here. If life isn't just a machine running a program, but an agent that is actively creating its own meaning and its own purpose, well, that forces us to look at one of the oldest questions in a whole new light. What does it truly mean to be alive?